younger groups about getting a booster. Again, if somebody's in their 60s, okay, I could see it. I could see that it's probably worth the risk, maybe. 70s, I'm getting a little more convinced. 80s, okay, you should take it. But in these younger groups, I don't see the data suggesting this. I know this is complicated, but you have to understand it's not as black and white as it's portrayed, right? Why do you think that the own panel of the FDA, 16-2, said don't give boosters to people under 65, yet they still said you got to do it? Why is that? Right? This is why data needs to be looked at carefully, okay? And here's the data where I said to you that they did not see some of these same risk groups that we normally see in our studies as being important. Again, questioning how reliable is that Israel data? How applicable is it to you, right? All right. Based on blood donations, by the middle of last year, we had about 83% of the US donors showed some coronavirus antibodies, which means that we're getting immunized as a population over time. Vaccine may help prevent some long COVID, which is why I like primary series, again, boosters, I feel differently. The UK dosing suggests wider intervals may be more helpful, right? Now, I want to show you something else about boosters, okay? Look at this very carefully. This is a study from Denmark, okay? This is very important. Look at this study. You look at this and say, oh, I see vaccine effectiveness. Look how effective it is over here. Look how effective it is. Wait. What's exactly going on here with these green lines? Why are they crossing over no effectiveness? And why, when you get to 90 to 150 days, if anything, the vaccines look like they're permissive, meaning all of a sudden those people that got the boosters, they're doing worse later. But I told you Israel only followed for 54 days. So you just do this part of the curve and you're going to see one answer, right? And this is with Omicron, right? Which is the one we're dealing with right now. This is why it's so important to keep that booster information in mind. Because in this study, if anything, not only was it not of benefit in the long run, it might have been harmful. Well, you say, well, how's that possible? Well, remember, I told you before, when you have these antibodies that attack the virus, sometimes you will get antibodies that can make it more permissive, right? This is the way it goes. With the variants, there will always be what's called anagenic shift and anagenic drift. There will be variants in every condition. These are always endemic. We're now measuring variants where we didn't used to, right? In the flu, we didn't used to take a careful look at these. In the flu, you had that. By the way, I want you to remember something. A couple things. One. Influenza mutates at twice the rate of coronavirus, right? And so that's why we give flu shots every year. And by the way, if you haven't had flu shots this year, I want you to get your flu shot. You know, I'm a big vaccine person. I want that, right? I'm only pointing out some of the trade-offs that need to be kept in mind, okay? These things are endemic. Remember, I told you that before, and that's important to always keep in mind, okay? Next, COVID variants are more transmissible and all contain adaptations in that spike protein. It's a normal process, and when things change in selection pressures, these will change. What is important is to keep in mind that in medicine, you identify the risk groups and you focus on that, right? That's why I showed you those graphs, whereas looking at those studies where who was really benefiting, who was really at risk, especially from those boosters, it's those risk groups, right? And so that's something to keep in mind as to how these things will get impacted, how they get affected, right? There's a term, Cervicovirus, which is a virus of potential cause, and they already are studying those, and the current vaccines appear to be able to cover that, right? Remember, it is in the virus' best interest not to be lethal, right? So when I first gave my talks, you may recall I said to you, there's going to be variants. I said to you that there's going to be mutations, and I said to you, and not all that's bad news, because the viruses have an adaptation where they don't want to be lethal, Because if they're lethal, then they kill off all their hosts and they can't replicate. That's why, by the way, that's why when the original SARS and the original MERS came out, those were not pandemics. They were localized epidemics because they're very lethal. So they killed off all the hosts very quickly. It didn't get to transmit. But over time, if you start having these types of variants, which is what is going to happen, they're not going to be bad. And if anything, I'm not wishing illness on anyone, but if somebody were to say to me, what's the best vaccine right now? The best vaccine right now is Omicron. Because if you get a natural infection, I showed you all the data about the benefits of natural infection. I showed you all the data about not getting side effects from these vaccines, right? And again, I'm not talking about the primary series. I want everybody to get the primary series. I'm talking about what to do in interpretation, especially with boosters, right? About keeping in mind what's going on and what we're up against, okay? Public health response, again, there's no good data about these lockdowns, and there is good data that the lockdowns have created more harm and killed more people and was not a good issue to pursue. Australia is up there, their head in trouble. Everybody always tell me, oh, Australia did this. Australia. Look, Australia's having lots of trouble right now, okay? And so what about people say, what about the public health of wearing masks? Okay, there's a lot of stuff back and forth. I don't have time to do the whole mask talk. You may have heard it from me before, but in general, if you're indoors in a small room with a lot of people who you don't know and you want to wear a mask, okay, you know, it's fine. Otherwise, this nonsense about walking outside and being outside with masks on is crazy. It's just crazy. It's just not even tethered to medical reality. And should not be something that's even suggested by anyone, right? When you look at some of the data in the literature, if you want to look it up, Ladapo, who's now head of Florida's program, talked about this. And remember, he talked about the cases being driven by asymptomatic spread. That's just the way it is, folks. It's not going to be who got sick and when. It's going to be people that before they're sick. It's going to be kids that were not sick that you didn't know. It's going to be people that are just born with good immune systems. People already have antibodies. They're just not going to be the ones that are going to cause you to be aware of what's going on, right? And so that's one of the things that's important to keep in mind for that. Okay. Next, there's good data though on the negative impacts when kids are not in school, right? So that's part of that ebb and flow we talked about whether or not to immunize the kids and what does that mean for the kids. Next, I have to spend time in this. This is something, if you forget everything else that I've tried to impart, which of course would bother me because I've tried to do it well, but you have to know that the data reporting is so misleading because everybody's saying cases are up, the hospitals are up, and all this kind of stuff. First of all, everybody's entering a hospital is getting tested for corona. Everybody. 2, we didn't used to do that before with flu and a lot of other things. 3, when they get tested, if they're positive, it's not that they have infection. It's not that they're in the hospital with corona. It's not that they're even sick with corona. It could be that there's some viral particles left over from a past infection. But it gets reported as a corona case, and the hospitals get paid more for doing that. They say, oh, we got another corona case. Good for us. We're going to make more money. That's why all this data is so distorted about what is or is not a corona case, okay? So this is the terrible COVID cycle that we're all in. You stay at home, a new vaccine's created, you get the vaccine, then you put the man's back, and again, it goes around in a circle, and it drives everybody nuts, okay? So some final points. The third booster shot. Probably in the future with a different formulation, I would be much more supportive of it, right? I support this in immunocompromised. And remember, we're only measuring the antibody levels, not the whole cellular system. And I've gone through, again, all the data with you about the importance of T cells. You raise the antibody levels, and you probably increase the proportion of people who respond. But again, I've gone through with you that it doesn't have clarity that those higher levels is going to make a big difference for you, right? Next, the reactogenicity of third dose seems to be similar to the others. And again, I've told you why I have grave difficulties about this stuff in the kids, the adolescents, and the teens, the 20s, the 30s, because remember, I showed you the data. The problems are in the older folks, 60s, 70s, 80s. It's the people that have the problems where a booster can be justified to balance against the risk, because these boosters have risk, right? The CD recommends for general public. I've talked about that, but we've talked about the side effects, and it's questionable benefit. And I'm not just the only one. The whole Barrington Declaration group is against this. That's 17,000 care providers, by the way. The FDA panel, 16-2, was against this, right? As of December, we've had about 5 billion doses worldwide. U.S. is 486 million. 202 million people are fully vaccinated. The warp speed, I talked about that before, was good. There's still the good safety monitoring. Anaphylaxis is rare. The safety is consistent with the trials, but there is safety issues, right? And that's what I've tried to highlight with you. Okay, and that's the end of this talk. And what I'm going to do now is go